introduce us.
Good morning. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you,
Uh,
Rabbi.
Itai and the two Jew crew.
The Ice Rabbi,
Ice Rabbi, yes, had a beautiful ice bath today.
Jewish Wim
Yeah, you should come with me next time.
No,
Don't be so scared.
getting hypothermic,
No. You
very
gotta go
quickly.
beyond
No, I'm
your
from Israel,
limitations.
man. You are actually from South Africa, so you are coming from an hot place as well. But
Yes.
I cannot tolerate cold water. I mean, I can tolerate, but I don't like tolerating it. I can tolerate other things that people don't like, and I can like it, but this one is not part of it.
Okay, so what do we have on today? What discussion are we
Oh,
going to
wow.
speak about today?
So let me explain. So I was in the car with you coming back from Mincha, and you mentioned that you watched a film about a nuclear shelter and some guy going there into the nuclear shelter, coming out 30 years after, and then he sees our society has changed and he wants to go back to the shelter. I don't know this film. Maybe I've heard about it. I watched a lot of films in my life, sci-fi especially, some of them really bad, some of them really good. I like all of them in general. But this one I don't know, but it reminded me the Twilight Zone. And I'm talking about the original series that started at 1959 and is the brainchild of the genius Rod Serling, which I admire for what he did. Rod Serling was born in 1924. He is an American Jew. He was an American Jew, and he participated in a war, in the Second World War. He fought against the Japanese, extremely fierce fighting, so a lot of death, horrible horrible events that he was part of. He got injured as well, like many others. It's actually, you know what? I don't want to change the subject, but it reminds me the story of Barney Ross, the boxer. You know, David Razovsky. Have you mentioned in the past?
No, I don't think so.
So he was one of the greatest fighters of the golden age of boxing, and he was a champion in three weight classes. Think about it. And back then there were less weight classes. Today there are so many weight classes, so it's much easier to be a champion. Plus there are so many different belts. The ABC, it's just celebration. So he did it in times when it was not, and he has incredible names on his record that he beat up. It's McLaren and Tony Canzoneri, and he fought Henry Armstrong, who was one of the greatest fighters ever. He lost. That was his last fight, but he lost on his feet. He said, I'm not going down. And then after that, he retired and joined the army. He said, "It's not enough for me to be a great boxing champion. I want to be part of the war against the Japanese, against the Axis. So he joined the army and he found himself with Guadalcanal.
Yeah,
it was incredible fighting going on there. And he received, I think, one of the highest decorations because he fought by himself. Even though he was injured, he fought against several Japanese. All his other buddies died, and there was one guy who was in a really bad state, was about to die, that he saved him, he carried him on him. Incredible story Barney was. And he came from a very religious family, by the way. His father told him, they lived in Chicago. Think about it. And he was a fighter who fought in the 30s. Okay, so he was born in 1909. So he was a kid growing up around, a bit more. It was like, Chicago became very, very serious place, especially for criminality.
Yeah.
And
hasn't changed.
Oh, I don't know. But his father told him, look, he was actually studying the Talmud. He was yeshiva boy. And his father told him, boxing, fighting is not for us.
It's not for Jews.
Yeah, it's not for Jews. Exactly, that's what he said to him. But unfortunately for him, he saw his father getting murdered during a robbery. So think about that, what he did to him. He said, okay, so that's the life for me. I mean, that's not the life for me that my father wanted me to have. I have a different life now. Now he's becoming part of the Chicago mob. I mean, not necessarily a mobster, you know what I mean? But he became one of these street boys.
I understand.
But because of that, he started boxing and showed his talent. So it just reminded me the experiences. Rod Serling was a boxer as well, but as an amateur.
Right.
Okay, so coming.
Seems like in those days a lot of people were boxers just to get on the ladder.
It's a great sport for discipline. I think that anyone who understands discipline or understands, I think, morals on an earthly level, I believe, it's one of the greatest sport. I mean, everyone should.
I think martial arts in general.
Yes, for me, boxing is the best. I'm not an expert on the other martial arts. I know a bit about them, but definitely boxing. But coming back to the story of the Twilight Zone, so Rod Serling started this show in 1959. He had terrible experiences in the war, as I said, and used a lot of it in order to create his episodes. But not all of them are just about war and the atrocities of death. A lot of them are actually, for me, are very Torah, very, very Torah, because they are fables and allegories about human nature, about human psychology, about human behavior. And
Okay.
the reason, okay, you want to say something?
No. I'm just
Okay,
listening.
you're going to comment about it.
Yeah, I want to. We're going to go through each of like a few episodes
Yes.
and you're going to explain what the episode's about.
And then you can say to me your take,
Yeah.
give me your take about it, because you haven't watched it.
I haven't watched it at all. No,
But I
but
would
it
like
sounds interesting.
very much.
I've watched the Steven Spielberg one,
Okay.
and I found that if you haven't watched it, have you watched it?
What year was it produced in?
I'm not sure when it's here, but it's really one of his top films. You know, it's all different skits of different people experiencing very weird things and nobody else is experiencing. And it's not sure if it's in the guy's mind or not in the guy's mind. Like you're not really sure, which I'm sure that's probably what the Twilight Zone's about.
Sound good, yeah.
You see one of the guys, there's one that Steven Spielberg does, one of the episodes where you have a guy on a plane. And he's on a plane.
I remember
and he looks outside the window and he sees like this alien destroy. You've seen it? You watched it?
Of course.
Now, obviously, every time the air hostess looks, she doesn't see
I
it.
believe it's, by the way, based on a true on an episode of the Twilight Zone with William Shatner. Do you remember Star Trek? Of course.
Yeah, I'm not such a big fan of Star Trek.
Yeah, but he was the captain, and the original one is with William Shatner, that he's seeing some sort of a gremlin eating the engine.
Correct.
So what? So what?
Is it real or not?
It's a remake.
Yeah, it's probably a remake, but it's still. I think the point still
playing
is
with the imagination of someone, or is it real or not?
Is it real or not? To him, it was real. To the air hostess, to the rest of the world, it's not real. But does that make it real or not real? At the end of the day, there was fire on that engine.
Yes.
You know,
but how the fire
who caused it? You know.
Yeah, he saw a gremlin doing it.
It could just be a mechanical error. But I'm just saying that's what was fantastic. And there's another one about the big fly trap eating people. Did another one. Anyway, that's how.
I'm sure I watched so many things in my life that has to do with the genre, so I'm pretty sure that I did. And I like Spielberg, and he grew up on that. I mean, there is no way. I mean, you cannot avoid something like that, especially if you are such a.
So, I do understand the motive, the concept behind the Twilight Zone, and how we all kind of really experience the Twilight Zone.
That's it, and that's why Rod Serling is so fundamental, in my opinion. He was such a great researcher into the human psyche, and a great. The episodes themselves are very short. I mean, compared to what you see.
You know, it reminds me of. Sorry, I just need to jump in. There's a very famous story. That's I don't know who actually says the story, but the story is an analogy to to let's say what's going to happen in the future. So there's a story about this family, yes, that they couldn't pay the rent one day. So the landlord took them and put them in this deep hole, shoved them all the way down. And every week he would go and throw food down once a week, a whole bunch of food. And this family just lived in this hole, very, very deep hole. Eventually, the parents died and the children grew up, right? And every week they got food, okay? And then suddenly they died and their children, I remember their grandchildren never ever experienced what's above. They only experienced what was in the hole. That's it, right? So all they knew was the hole. And then they had children. So 3 or 4 generations. And they had a tradition that, that hole that every week throws, that if, there's a whole world over there, there's people and everything. And if we get out the hole, we'll be full of, it'll be freedom. But it was just a tradition. And they used to argue, it's not true. It is true. What are you talking about? These are Bobbernizers.
It's placed on a Plato's cave, I believe, the concept, philosophical concept.
So they're all. And then one day, another person, and this happens, and generation after generation, there's this argument. Does the next world exist or doesn't it exist?
That's a Twilight Zone for you.
And then what happens is one day, another person, the landlord's generations, chucks another person who couldn't afford the rent. He comes into the house and he tells, I'm telling you, it exists. It exists. There is a God. And I'm saying that's a Twilight Zone.
That's absolutely.
Obviously, we all know the analogy of what it's talking about. We're sitting in this world, and everyone tells there is a God, there's not a God, there is, is the Messiah going to come? Every once in a while we get a righteous individual like a tzaddik who comes down and tells us, guys, there is a God, and there is, you guys are debating this. What are you debating? Anyway,
they cannot see. They cannot see beyond you.
They cannot see the beyond the
Yeah,
tunnel that the
exactly.
little hole there.
I think again, it's Plato's cave. This philosophical concept. I think I saw it somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so. We can check later if you want. But so that's a very Twilight Zone episode. What you said, and
We should make our own Twilight Zone on that.
you can. I think. Look, I watched a lot of the episodes years ago. What I'm telling to you today is going to be from my memories. Watching it. I remember watching some of them as a teenager, then coming back when it became a bit more available because of the internet. And let's try to see.
Yeah.
But definitely, I'm pretty sure that things like that came on the Twilight Zone. I remember. I just don't remember by episode. But let's talk about The Lonely. The Lonely is one of my favorite episodes. So the story goes like that. There's a guy who was convicted of murder that apparently he hasn't committed, but he was convicted anyway. It's in the future. So his punishment was to be sent for half a century on a planet by himself. He got the whole planet to himself, but it's just him there. Terrible. I mean, he doesn't see any human soul, nothing, just him in the middle of some sort of a desert. By the way, another thing, the aesthetics of the Twilight Zone for me were just superb. Very simple, very American, of course, because it started 59, so late 50s into the 60s. Black and white, again, 25 minutes, short episodes, always leave you taste for more. You understand? You always feel like, wow, it's so short, it's fantastic, it's just amazing. It brings the point very, very quickly, but there is so much content at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I love the aesthetics of the Twilight Zone. If I will ever direct something, I will do it like that. And you need very minimal equipment to do it correctly. So this is just about the content, the level of the writing. So this guy is just there on the planet by himself, and every 4 years or so, there's a spaceship coming, bringing some supplies, okay, and renewing the supplies. And the guy, the captain, feels sorry for the man that he's so alone. So one day he brings in a robot that looks like a woman, exactly like a real woman, but it's a robot. And he tells him, look, I cannot bring any human. Your punishment is to be by yourself. But it's a robot, so technically it's not alive. Okay, it's not a human being anyway. So you can use it. And he is very upset about it. Yeah. He doesn't see it at all as a gift. He sees it as something that is an abomination. It's something that comes, it's almost like insulting him. It's humiliating that he's there, not only that he has to be without humans, but now he has to be with a robot, with some sort of this creation that is so inferior in his eyes, and he resents the robot, even though the robot this woman behaves very kindly to him, and he constantly resents it. At certain point, from the resentment, if I remember it correctly, so the woman, she starts really becoming emotional, the robot, and then he realizes, oh, there's something there. There's something. This is not actually. He doesn't see the cogs anymore. He doesn't see the electric circuits. He doesn't see it anymore. Okay, so he becomes slowly falls in love with it. He falls in love with it. That's a real human being. I'm not even talking about romantic love. It's just someone that you can share your life with. You understand? Especially it's a female as well. And by the end of it, because now I would like to hear your take on that. So what happened is that at a certain point, after a few years, that he's already so deeply involved with her, the captain comes and he says to him, look, they reviewed the case. You haven't committed the murder. Now you got clemency or whatever you call it. That's it. We have to take you back. We take you back to live with human beings. Like, we save you from this horrible punishment. But he said to him, but we cannot take the robot. There is only that much weight that you can carry on the spaceship. The robot is not with us. And he says, no, he cannot. He refuses. Eventually, the captain says that there is not much because the orbit, when the planet goes out of orbit, they cannot come back. So they need to be, they're very limited in time. The spaceship, if that take off at certain point, that's it. It's finished. They cannot go back to Earth. So he takes his gun and kills the robot, the captain. It's horrible. You can see the reaction of the man there. His name is Corey. And for me, one of the most amazing things is that just when it ends, because that's a typical Rod Serling end that is so fascinating, you can see the robot dying, and then he says Corey. He says the name of the man. It's so sad to see it, but then it repeats Corey, which is not human. It's a mechanical device. It's an electronic device. It's almost like a loop of something that is broken mechanically. And that's how it ends, and you see the subtitle, the titles coming. My God, man, that was one of the best things I've watched. I remember that was fantastic to me. So I'd like to,
Let me ask you, what before you ask me, what made it so fantastic to you?
Many things. One of them, again, I told you, the end of it, how it actually blends this, blends the different approaches or realities or whatever you want to call it. And at first glance you see something so tragic because there a machine, there is not a machine, sorry, there is something, a woman, okay, that she's not biological, but she's dying, and she's saying the name of the man that she loves, or he loves her, or he believes that she believes she loves him. It's very difficult to explain what is going on, especially today. That's the reason why I'm talking about it, by the way, because today AI is in the middle of all the conversations, and consciousness. And consciousness,
it's about to take over the world.
exactly, but also the actually the philosophical question and debate about consciousness.
So what you're asking is like this: if someone comes to the rabbi with a robot woman,
yeah, you want to marry?
Can I marry her?
She wants to convert.
She wants to convert.
Can you convert her? Can you convert?
And they're able, listen, the way the rate this is going, who knows what you can have. You could program in emotions. I don't know if the emotions will exist per se, but you can definitely program in emotions.
Program, but it doesn't show consciousness. I don't think so. But that's a different thing. At the same time, but another, you ask me the question, just want to finish that. Okay, so there you see something that is very tragic and very sad. Emotionally, it's very loaded, and it's so beautiful and sad at the same time. But then when it starts looping, going into a loop, Corey, you realize that's a machine. But let
me ask you a question?
Yes.
No, just on tragedy, right?
Yeah.
Don't you think that definitely the tragedy exists? There's no doubt about it that the guy, he feels absolute tragedy, and you know what?
Yeah.
Probably he would probably mourn. He would be in a state of mourning.
Of course.
Correct?
He's going.
Let me ask you something. Do you think that there's a difference when you, as a kid, when, let's say, for example, let's say your favorite toy, yeah? I don't know if you remember being a kid.
Definitely remember.
And I'll give you someone gives you a
I played
toy.
with Lego all day long.
Someone gives you Lego, yeah? And then suddenly, I don't know, you're busy walking in the street with your box of Lego, you trip, it falls down the drain, or somebody takes it, steals it, something, it gets destroyed, right? That feeling of tragedy, do you think it's any different than any other tragedy that exists?
Yeah. It's hard for me to say. Actually, I think
very hard, no?
I think that's what I'm saying. Ask questions. There are a lot
so
of
therefore,
questions.
it's irrelevant in a way whether it's a robot or a human being.
Yeah, no. By the way, I'm not saying I ask the same questions. I'm just giving different sides here. For me, it's the beauty of how Rod Serling put it, because it shows you this one side and another side of it. He shows you that
he's showing you that I think the way he's showing that your emotion for anything, if you produce this emotion, the emotion is there, whether it's a machine or a human being.
Yes.
Correct?
No, I understand.
And therefore the tragedy and that exists. The only difference is, I would say, that if it was
on the side of the robot, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
No, for example, the robot is dead. The robot doesn't exist. The robot exists with wires and everything. And there, to be, thinking about it, here's a crazy crazy twist. Crazy twist. If you don't believe that a body has a soul, then what's the difference?
No, you're right about it. I'm not saying there is a difference. Again, what I'm doing
What's the difference between a robot and a human being? If you don't believe there's a soul,
for me,
that there's a
personally, there is no difference.
That you can connect with the soul after the parting. That the parting has no influence on the soul.
I agree with you. That I agree with you about. I'm just saying that what I liked about it is actually that it leaves an open question.
What's the open question?
For me, again, because you see something that is so. Also, we can actually explore it from the point of view of the woman, of the robot, but as a female robot. But how much she actually has emotions? Is it programmed? Does it have any consciousness?
When it's dead,
yes,
it doesn't exist now.
Okay, no. But I'm not talking about now the departing of the soul. I understand what you're talking about. That I agree with you about. I'm just talking about the way that Rod Serling is putting the very end of it, where you can see something that can be absolutely human, unless you could see when it's dying in its last words, the way it behaves, it's extremely human. But then when you see it's actually made of wires, that's one thing. Already you see visually that it's not human, but that's not good. That's not enough. Then you hear it repeating itself, so it's almost becoming a machine. So then you can see the machine that almost is. Again, that is a dummy. Doesn't have consciousness.
Correct.
It just repeats boom, 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 because there is a short circuit. It's about to die, and then someone short circuited.
Correct, 100%. Yes. But you can have the same question if there's no soul. If there's no soul, then I think it's a deep point. If there's no soul, if you don't believe that there's a soul, then We also don't have consciousness.
Yes, it's another interesting question. I agree with you. I agree
We're
with you.
just a bunch of wires that are together.
No,
Being influenced by, as I mentioned to you the other day, by our surroundings or
yeah,
whatever. You know what I mean?
no,
So I don't. I mean, I think it's a very deep play. It's a very deep play, skit, whatever.
so that he was a deep guy, Rod Serling.
No, but I think it's very deep when it comes to. There's no doubt about it. The man's emotion to the woman was very much connected.
But
And now it was no, didn't exist.
okay.
When once this computer died, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yes, I understand that.
Maybe and before, would it have emotion or not? I don't know. Programmed in, I'm not sure about that. But I'm saying I'm looking at after the death.
Yes.
Before the death, you can debate. But then after the death, when she says Corey, it's a machine.
Yeah, that's how you showed it to the
Does at that point, is there any emotion? Does the emotion carry on? No, it's finished.
There is no conscious, there is no soul in that. So
Yes.
that's it. So it's dead.
It's
Completely.
dead.
It doesn't continue anymore.
It's dead. And I think that is that's the remarkableness of the story. I think.
No, it's definitely one part of it, which I think
that's what I was just thinking.
It's very good. And I like it, and I think that Rod Serling, and you will see, he explored these themes again and again. Not necessarily that particular one, but things that relates to each other. I'll tell you another story. And
yeah.
It's good. And you see, that's the reason why I brought it, because I think again there is so much Torah in that. Torah influenced everything.
Yeah.
People can deny, even if they want to deny, it's undeniable.
No, but it's just such a funny thing that you can have people who, if you don't think that there is a soul,
yes.
When people die, they just, what were they? Are they robots?
Yeah.
What were they?
Yeah, exactly. Just a robot. Yeah.
I'm just a robot. I'm just a robot. If it was just two robots having pre-programmed.
That's why I think it's so beautiful. When I was sitting with the rabbi, it was not in Mishnah the other day, and he spoke about the tablets. And when you see the tablets, you say "Ani Adonai Elohecha," and then you say "Lo tirtzach," and it's just it goes on the same line from 1 to 6, and you see the parallel between them, because humans were created in God's image. So when someone is murdered, it's killing the essence of the soul of something so godly.
Yeah,
that's the point. This is not just like destroying that. Take the laptop, break it like that. It doesn't matter how good, how smart the laptop is. It can make conversations, chatting, chat GPT, whatever. You break it like that.
Yeah,
but that's not good.
But also, if you look at don't murder, we could probably work it out ourselves. Don't murder. Correct?
Yes.
Without the Torah.
Yes.
We can figure out.
Yes, only very human.
So what's the unique thing that is God given? When it's unique? Like, it's very easy. We can sit around and say, yes, don't murder is not a good thing, but, maybe for the good of society, to get rid of these portions, you understand? Therefore, if it's not godly, if you don't have God inside the don't murder, then you can rationalize. And that's
what Nazis did. That's what other regimes did. Yes, of course. That's what I'm saying. This is This is very Darwinistic. If you're going to believe that you are part of that you are just a sophisticated animal, then you can find all the excuses in the world to become a killer. That's my opinion about it.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's the reason why I like it. I told you I like this lesson with fantastic. Anyway, I'm just saying to you. I know you know it already. I'll go with you to another episode that I'd love to your opinion about it. This is about God, I think. I mean, everything is about it. They call it the little people. So here for you another story about space travel. Now, a lot of things in the Twilight Zone were about, it was very sci-fi, but it's not just sci-fi. For anyone who thinks it's just a science fiction spaceship, whatever, forget about it. And it's not about aliens shooting lasers at each other. It's much greater. So there is a spaceship that lands somewhere on one of these planets, and there is a captain, and then there is a guy who is a lower rank. Forgot his name. And the lower rank guy suffers from some sort of inferiority complex. He's in this ego. He feels that he needs to be in charge of something.
One second, I don't say he's the captain of this.
No, there is a captain, and there is another guy. And the guy is a lower rank. He's been given the order. He's getting the orders from the captain, and he doesn't like his position. He wants to be the man who gives the captain. Yeah, he wants to be. Yeah, he needs power. He needs some power. He feels very powerless. He got this inferiority complex. So he hears some noise, strange noise. He starts searching for the source of it, and he discovers that there is actually a nation of small people, nation that looks exactly. These people look exactly like something on Earth.
Where?
On the planet. No, listen. Just try to try to listen to the story. It
Yeah, I'm
sounds
trying to
strange.
understand the story. So they look
Then
space travel.
no. There's a planet.
Oh,
Think
there's a
about
planet.
it.
Okay, right, there's a planet.
It's like you in your garden tomorrow. It's like it's as small as a
Oh,
garden.
so
Let's
they
say.
live on this planet.
Yeah, there is a planet that is big enough for human beings to live on. It's like Earth, let's say, okay? But there is, let's say, a garden size portion that there you see people that are so small, I don't know, maybe
Like
half a
ants.
centimeter, like ants, exactly, ants, and they got something that looks like, I don't know, like Kansas. It's almost like a city that looks like Kansas there
Yeah, yeah.
in your garden. You understand? They got tractors as well. They got everything there, and he discovers that they actually exist. And he looks at it, he said, wow, it's amazing. Now he becomes, but now he got some sort of a Gulliver complex. He says, I can be God of these people. He said, great. Now, so I'll be, for him, the way he looks at God, what he thinks about it, he thinks, I'm going to start intimidating them. I'll destroy them. He start using his, every time he tells them to do
Does he give
something,
them certain rules to follow?
yeah, he says to him, if I remember, give them all kind of orders, and when they don't, if they don't, he doesn't even wait for them to obey or not. He just comes and stomps on them, and destroy their places. Just real bad God, like it's remarkable. It's a great episode. He was a genius. So that's what happens, and then he tells them more than that. He tells them, "I want you to build a statue of me." So he gives them an order. They need to build a statue
Or they'll
of.
get squashed.
Yeah, exactly. If not, he's gonna
Wipe out the
squash
whole
them.
west side.
Exactly. So they built a statue of him that looks exactly like him, his size. Think about it. It's like the Tower of Babylon. For them, it's like building the Empire State Building. And they actually invest all the efforts in,
Resources.
yeah, in building a statue of him. Then at certain point, the captain, I think, sees what happens. The captain comes, he realizes what happened, and he gets very upset about him, and he tells him he should leave them alone and he should join him on the spaceship and come back. But he's in such a ego trip, he feels such a god that he kills the captain. You understand? This is how immoral. This is how it escalates into this really really terrible position where he's becoming completely satanic. Okay, so but the end of the episode is actually that this the funny thing. This Rod Serling is a bit funny, he's so happy now. He says, "Oh yeah, I can be God alone, and no one is going to interfere me." And suddenly he hears huge noises, and apparently he sees a giant, like astronauts, which are in the size of towers, coming to the same planet, and they see him and they squash him. That's how it ends. And this is just remarkable, I think, because think about it. It says so much about God in general and how humans try to be gods and what happens to them when they are trying to be God. Then there's something a bit bigger. It's so materialistic. It's so physical. This is people trying to manifest as God just because they got some power in their hands, and then they're going to be demolished by something a bit bigger than them. But God, the way that we think of, I believe that way that we see God is prior to everything else, and He's not physical, and we don't have statues, and we don't build big, magnificent,
We build buildings.
Yeah, but
synagogues.
Yeah, exactly, but not statues and not physical manifestations of gods or how they should look. Anyway, tell me. I'm sure you got something to say.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about a lot of different things. What I was thinking is we have a concept, which is we have a concept in Judaism, which people who listen to this won't like this concept.
I'd love you are
the concept, because people sometimes think that doing good is actually doing something good might not necessarily have bad ramifications. So we have this thing that if you do things in Judaism which seemingly are good but are selfish, they actually can lead to murder. So how does that work? What do you mean lead to murder? As you suggested, it says because like this, once you do anything, even though the act is good, it could even be learning Torah, it could even be learning Torah, it could be doing anything, but it's doing for your self pleasure. You're already putting yourself as important. You're kind of maybe in a very subtle way, but you're kind of feeding that ego. And once you're feeding that ego, you're not doing it because God told me to do it. I'm not doing it because, you know, because that's what God wants. You feed the ego, and once you start feeding this ego, and remember, the evil inclination is not a fool, even though we call him a foolish king. But he doesn't come to you on the first day and says, "Eat I want you to eat pig." He'll lose. He doesn't come to you the first. You understand? Because imagine he comes to a big rabbi and he says, "I want you to eat pig." Right? The rabbi, yeah. So what he does, he says, "You know what I want you to do, rabbi?" He says, "I want you to daven." You see, it's getting a bit. I want you to daven. I want you to learn now while you're supposed to be davening. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So, or I want you, yeah, he starts with these little small subtle things where, or I want you to do this and realize that you're doing this action and you'll get a nice portion in Olam Haba.
Yeah.
And he makes you kind of, or she makes you kind of do things from a selfish point of view. And then gets, once you get preoccupied with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and you build up your arrogance, as the story suggests, it leads you down the path to eventual murder, idolatry. Understand? That's where it leads you, because there is this there's me better than you. Why don't you say me better than you, and then you can embarrass somebody, and then the path is just all the way down.
Mm.
So his error happened right in the beginning of the whole story when he wanted to be leader. That's when he started, not when he stood on the. No, to have ambition is not a bad thing.
Of course, yeah, but
You understand?
the way that you're gonna utilize it.
Yeah. They said Moses was the most humble person in the world. You know why he was the most humble? You think he didn't know that he was a leader? He was the leader of the Jewish people. He was the leader of 3 million people.
Yeah.
So what made him humble? He knew exactly what he knew his strength. He knew his strength. Right? He went to he was in charge of building the tabernacle. He was in charge of speaking to God. What? Most humble. What made him most humble? Do you know what made him most humble, Itai? Is that when he saw you, he said, "If you had my talents, you'd be better."
You see.
Understand? That's what he said. And there was a story that Yeshua. What's the English name of Yeshua?
Sure. I mean,
Joshua.
Joshua. Yes, sorry, Joshua.
Joshua. There were two guys that walked, and they were giving over prophecy in the middle of the camp, and they were busy saying Joshua is going to take over from Moses. So Joshua came to Moses and said, "Can you believe these people? They're busy prophesying and saying all these things. You should stop them. You, the prophet." He said, "What are you talking about? My whole essence is to make other people as great as me, and if not greater."
Mm.
And that's a true. You understand?
That's
That
it.
he's not focusing on himself. He's focusing on what God wants, what's good, And that's what when you were telling me the story, that's what I was thinking about.
This is, I think, you have to tell me. You know it much better than I, but I think this is that's the opposite, or in a way that's very similar, but from different direction to what happened with Korach. And
Yeah, 100%. He did it exactly. Korach also wanted to be ambitious. Korach is basically this story.
yeah.
This is Korach's story. But I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody, and I was like, I was like thinking about how do you get people to come closer to Judaism who are not close, you know? And besides for just telling them to put on tefillin, and you have to work on their arrogance, because their arrogance is what's stumbling and not letting them go forward. You understand? That's what it does. Your own self love stops you from going forward.
No,
And some people are not conscious of it. Now, I'm not saying I'm the most humble person in the world. Whatever, I'm telling you, I suffer it myself. This disease, this arrogant disease, is the root of all problems.
The truth is the truth. You can be someone, you can say the truth, yet you not to live by that, but it's not good, but you still can say the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know what the truth is. I know how I'm supposed to function. I know that you're supposed to realize that you can learn from every single person. I know that everybody has, and you have to say that
applying it is not
very difficult.
but that's the work. No, that's the reason why all of that exists.
Yeah, exactly. This is what it's all about. All about is to.
That's the reason why it was given. Otherwise, you would have been lost.
Yeah, but I don't. But exactly.
But it's not. Of course, I'm not using it like as information that you digest as again like a robot. It's not Corey.
No, it's not Corey.
I understand.
Exactly. But I just want to go to another conversation we had in other podcasts. Is that studying knowledge.
Faust, I think you talk about.
Faust?
Maybe I think
just for the knowledge sake, it's not so good.
I think we talked about mathematicians as well. Just for the
knowledge itself, without the godly energy behind the knowledge, if just because you want to develop your brain or because you want to get smart, that is the route that will lead you down to the path of killing somebody. I don't mean physically killing somebody, could be embarrassing somebody. I had a person on my thing who said yesterday, we discussed thing before we get to the next one, because this is very interesting.
No, please.
And we got to the he said that, when a rabbi gets up to speak, he thinks to himself, 1 second, why do I have to listen to you when you have not achieved what I've achieved? I've been to university, I've got this degree, I've got this degree. What are you going to teach me? What are you, just a rabbi? So I said to him, that's a very shame to look at somebody like that. That is the height of arrogance. If you cannot realize,
it sounds terrible to me. By the way, Rob, most of them for me are dummies anyway, but that's my opinion.
But if you cannot
indoctrinated more than actually,
if you cannot say, listen, everybody can contribute and can teach me something, you're on the path of this guy. I don't know what his name is.
I forgot. We can find out.
Anyway, that's and if there's anything that this could teach you, Rod Stewart, what's his name? Rod Serling. That if anything that he can teach you is the destructiveness of arrogance. Yeah, not only did he kill these little people, he killed the captain, and he got killed himself. A whole thing. Did you understand? Everything. And those people who killed him, they suffer from the same arrogance. It's a continue. Some people don't want to realize their responsibility. Just one last thought.
No, on please, this. Don't worry about it.
Is that we know that the Torah was given on Mount Sinai. And why was it on Mount Sinai besides for any other mountain? Do you know why?
Tell me.
There was a bit of an argument between all the mountains. Where should it be? So the tall mountain said, it's a medrash.
I think I've heard some.
So the tall mountain said, the Torah should be given on me. But I'm so tall.
No.
The large one said, I should get up. So why? What are you talking about? And Har Sinai is like, I don't think the Torah should be given on me. So Hashem said, you're going to be, because you're the most humble.
This is so Torah, so Jewish, so unassuming in some way.
But here's the deep message of it, right? Humbleness doesn't mean that you don't have self-esteem.
Exactly.
It means you're still a mountain, but you're a humble mountain.
It should not contradict that.
You should be proud, confident, but realize that your strength comes from God. Your talents all come from God, and if other people have the same talents as you, they could even be better. And you wish your talents on everybody else, and you wish the best for everybody else. You understand? And that's
If anything, the great for me, one of
No, I'm done. I'm ready for the next.
No, I don't know. Before I move to the next one, I just want to say, if one of the greatest benefits for me, we are doing this podcast, is that you're actually giving. It's a great teaching that you're giving it, because I think today this is the only reason why we think about these aspects as like if they are like in some sort of contradiction, is because of the wrong teaching that people were given.
Yeah.
Now you show them a different side of it, and I agree with you. It makes sense as well. It's not that it doesn't make sense. It does.
So that's what I was thinking during this episode.
Fantastic. That's the reason why I brought it. I told you Rod Serling was extremely intelligent, and he wrote derivatives of the Torah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's speak about another one. Rip Van Winkle Cutter. Do you know the story of Rip Van Winkle?
No.
It's some sort. I think it's one of these fables or fairy tales out there. I'm not sure. But it's I need to read it again. I read it when I was a kid. I read a lot of these things when I was a kid. And it's a story about someone who fell asleep for 100 years. So he built,
He's gone. I need to sleep.
A lot of people today would love
the moment all I hate
would love to sleep for 100 years. But he built something around this theme, and it was just fantastic. So four criminals, I believe it was four criminals, made a great heist. They managed to steal $1 million for Fort Knox in gold. Yes. So they take the gold and they go to one of these caves somewhere in the desert in America, in the States, and they lock themselves there, and they have an engineer, a scientist or someone like that builds some sort of an aquariums that they, each and every one of them goes inside the aquarium. And the point is that they're going to sleep for 100 years. 100 years is enough for them to escape with no penalty for the crime, right? They wake up after 100 years.
And everybody else forgot about it.
Yeah, everyone else forgot about it. No one can legally touch them probably. So they have $1 million, and I don't know about the inflation, but it's in gold. It's in gold. Yes, so
there's no real inflation.
Yeah, exactly. So it's gold, and they got enough, equivalent of 1 million back then in gold. So it's a perfect plan. It's a perfect crime, right? No, of course not. Something has to happen. So what happens that they put themselves under this deep sleep, cryonics, I think they call it, the science. That was invented by a Jewish guy as well, by the way. The idea of like taking people, trying to freeze them and wake them up at certain point. That was also invented by a Jewish man who actually read a story in one of these science fiction magazines of decades ago. I read the story as well. It's a really nice story, very short story, and that inspired him to believe that he can actually take people, deep freeze them, and then revive them at certain point.
Interesting.
Okay, so the story is like that. So they put themselves into that sort of state of sleep, almost death, whatever you want to call it. And something happens. There was an accident. I think one of them, there was one of the stones falls from the cave and kills, opens the aquarium of one of them, and he dies. Anyway, they wake up after 100 years, and three stay alive, and then they say, okay, now we're free. We can do whatever we want. However, what happens? The first thing that happens is greed. I'm remembering it or I'm talking from the top of my head, because I remember I watched it a few years ago. Greed. So they start fighting each other. You understand? They start fighting because of the gold between each other. And now, more than just that, I think they start carrying the gold in the desert, and they have no water, they have nothing to drink, nothing. So not only they are fighting each other and trying to kill each other, but also I think the last guy that actually stayed with the gold is so heavy, he hardly have anything left from this $1 million worth of gold, but he still carries it on himself, and he's about to die because he cannot drink anything.
But they just wasted his
Yeah,
life.
waste all his energy, got no water, is about to faint and then die. Okay, so what happens eventually? He actually dies on the side of the road. He managed to reach the road like that, the promised land, so called, and then he just dies. He falls, and that's it.
Does
So
anybody come along and pick up the guy?
that's the thing. Listen to this. And then suddenly, after I don't know, few minutes, or whatever, that comes a car, futuristically designed car, because they're in the future. One of these retro futures, if you look at the design from our point of view. And in this car, there is a man and a woman, I think, and they look at this guy and they say, "Oh, what happened to him? He's dead. He's dead. We cannot help him anymore." And they see him and said, "How did he die?" And they see he carried gold. So the man takes the gold, the man from the future takes the gold, and it says, so look at it, and he throws it. Who needs it?
Exactly.
Because gold means nothing in the future. They can produce gold. You understand?
Amazing.
So that's the end of it.
So it reminds me of a story. It reminds me of a Jewish story.
Fantastic.
Yeah, about this guy who, I don't know if it was the king's son. What was the king's son? I can't remember what the analogy. We'll figure out. But
Don't worry. Take
he
it
says,
easy.
the king, he's the son. He says, "Listen, I don't want to. I want to make things for myself. I want to, The king says, "Okay, here's a whole bunch of gold." Oh no, sorry. Sorry, the story goes like this. He heard that there's a little island where the pavements are made of gold and everything gold and diamonds. That's what he found. And he said, I'm going to make it to this island. Yeah. And they say, okay, fine. And he says goodbye to his family, to everybody in the town, everyone's he's going to. Anyway, he goes to the island and he finds this island of gold and silver, with gold and diamonds, and he walks into the island, and he starts chopping away at the things, and people walking around and like, "Are you crazy? What are you doing? You're messing our roads." Because we talk about your gold and diamonds, and they said, "You must talk with anything over here, gold and diamonds."
Yeah, exactly.
Says, "What? What are you talking about? It's all over the place." So what's word? What's word? What's money? What's word? Fish. Fish. He goes, okay. So he starts to go into the fish business over there, and he gets fish and everything. Anyway, after 10 years, he figures, you know what? Now it's time to go back home. Yeah? So he sends a telegram to his family. He's coming back home. So they're all waiting, He says, yes, I found the island. I'm coming back home. So they're all waiting over there by the harbor, waiting to see all the gold and the diamonds that he's bringing back, Suddenly, smells fish smell. I don't know what it is. It's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And suddenly they see him in this big boat, and the boat is stinking of fish. Do you know what I mean? And he's standing over there, and it's like, "Where's the golden diamonds?" Like, "What are you talking about? I've only got fish." That's the story.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's about perspective.
It's about perspective. Yeah. It's about, in this case of Serling, is really about human nature, how easy it was for these people to deteriorate to that point that they're killing each other for gold, and what is actually the
It's
value
worth
of gold.
nothing.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful story. You
Uh,
know, I like it's a very good marshal. It's the same marshal about the fish.
exactly. It's fantastic.
You
So
know,
that was the episode. I have to watch it again, and also, like I said before, it's beside the great script. It was also done very beautifully. It was there's so much there was so much suspension there. There was something about it that was so intriguing. You know, you would not you would dive. That was me. I would dive into the episode. It becomes your reality when you watch it. It's fantastic.
yeah.
I just going to mention another one, and that's the reason why I came with the Twilight Zone because of what you talked with me about, which is the shelter. So Rod Serling investigated, experimented with that concept as well. I have to remember the episode. I think I remember it. I did some reading as well, but I watched it many years ago. So the idea is like that in one of these comfortable suburbs in the States where people are just comfortable, everything in their life is just looks nice and they don't have to worry about anything. But since, you know, of course, it's the Cold War, and of course, the Cold War also inspired a lot of fantastic science fiction, suspension, supernatural ideas and films and stories. So there is one neighbor out of all of them. They sit together and talk about basically almost nothing, you know. And there's one guy who actually builds a shelter because he believes that a nuclear assault is possible.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of
So he builds a nuclear shelter, and I think they mock him, and some of them are one of some of these liberals, you know, they tell him there's never going to be a war, and you are fear mongering, you know, you fear mongering, and all you know stuff. And then suddenly there is an alert, some sort of an alert. We suspect there is a nuclear war coming, you know. So suddenly I think there is a signal on the television, on the radio, whatever it was. You got we suspect that the Russians started a nuclear war with us. So immediately escapes to the immediately escapes to the shelter. He closed the shelter and he's there with his family. And then you can see the neighbors coming because they come to the it's part of a basement. So they said to them, "You can be in the basement." But suddenly, if I remember correctly, what Rod Sterling wanted to investigate is actually how humans become animals under certain pressure when they have to fear for their lives. Then you could see how all this nice conversation, very civilized neighbors who live this upper middle class lifestyle suddenly becomes like animals. They're trying to break the door to shelter. We want to get in. We need to get in. You know, and suddenly they are not as liberals as they were before. Not that peaceful and pacifist about life. And it was just beautiful experiment in psychology, in human psychology. Eventually, at the end, actually, they realized that it was a false alert. There was actually some satellites that broke and they fell through the atmosphere, and that they were suspected to be a nuclear attack. But again, what is the beauty of the story is actually it shows you how these people who are seem to be so nice and civilized become anything but nice and civilized when their life is on the line or when they suspect that something is happening.
Correct. So it's two thoughts. Yeah. One thought is there is a halacha. There is how do you translate halacha? I don't know what it is.
Spiritual law. I don't know.
There is a law. There's a law that says like this: if we're in the desert, right, and we only have one cup of water, one bottle of water.
This is Akiva, by the way.
Yeah, we have one bottle of water.
Yes. Okay.
I do not have to give it to you.
Tell me.
I have to save myself.
Please expand.
That's what it is.
That's it.
You can't expand it. That's what it is. You have to take care of yourself.
Makes sense. Good. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. Not because of egotistical reasons, because I think it's morally correct. I think, and it's very good that you said it. Why I said expand, okay, if you cannot expand, you cannot. But
I'm saying it just is what it is. You can either like it or not like it.
No, I'll tell you. No, I'll tell you why I would like you if you can, because I think that one of the problems of society today is this. There is a lot of false sense of humanity or selflessness in people. I think that some people believe if you ask questions like that, most of the people today who don't don't have the teaching, they would say, I will give him the battle. Commit suicide and give him the battle.
Okay, fine. But
which, by the way, in reality, I don't think it would happen. Maybe it would. But the thing is that I think that today people are willing, at least in theory, to sacrifice themselves for not for righteous reasons, because they were taught by movies, by the academy, by all kind of different pipes, word of mouth, and some other urban mythologies that they should actually they would answer, oh, you should sacrifice themselves. They don't
Yeah,
understand for
yeah, yeah,
what.
yeah. I agree.
Dying on a
So,
cross,
Rich,
like
well, another thought I was having a few thoughts. Ricky Gervais. So
yes,
when he gets up for because you mentioned all these Hollywood stars, he basically says to them, don't come up here and lecture us,
I remember that, yeah,
you know,
and he said it right,
and
good.
he's 100% right, you
I
know,
agree,
because you're in
yeah.
this privilege. And then I was thinking, you know, sometimes people uh sometimes people put themselves on this ladder of of tolerance, this ladder of
Yeah,
uh, you know, of because this is the right thing this is what society's telling them to do. And I don't know if they really believe it. They're just trying to convince themselves
exactly,
that
yeah.
this is the right thing, but they're not. So there's somebody that I know, I'm not going to tell you further than that, that he always does the right thing. You know, he always does the right thing.
It
And
sounds
I
very
can't
wrong.
stand those people
Yeah,
who always
it
do the
sounds
right.
very wrong.
No, I don't want you to do the right things.
Yeah.
I want you to be, don't do it because it's the right thing to
Yeah.
do. Do it because you want to do it. And if you don't want to do it, then don't do it. But don't do it because, yes, I know that you have to live in a civil society and you have to do it, but don't come out. I shouldn't say don't, but it's
I know
just
what bothers you. It's the indoctrination. It's the programming. It's lack of
like,
self.
no, exactly. Is
There's
this really who
no,
you are?
yeah. There's no. It's programming.
Is this really who you are? Like, give a
Yeah,
thought about the situation you're in.
exactly.
You know, don't be afraid to express yourself. I'm not saying have manners, but I'm just saying, you know, I know you're asking me how I'm doing, but do you really care how I'm doing?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, what? Just because you're ticking the box, you know, go over there. And yeah, so that's another thought that I was
I
that I was having. That sometimes you have these people that you are they're very big into, you know, so, you know, I'm the biggest, as some people say that they're the biggest advocates for transgender and all these things that
yeah,
their own children have the issue, you know, and somebody else it's not an issue, you
yeah,
know.
I understand. Yeah. Usually, these are the greatest preachers. Yeah.
Yeah, and then but you have the few crazy people who like will want to encourage their own children to become transgender, even though they don't even think about becoming transgender or gay or whatever it is. But I'm just saying, it's such a beautiful story that he painted over here on human nature.
It is.
And I was also thinking about, honestly, I was also thinking about, even though I hate mentioning it, because I think we need to kind of not stop mentioning it, but it reminds me of Nazi Germany also. How,
I'm always willing to talk about it, as you
yeah,
know.
no,
I don't want to make it
no, it reminds,
you know, but
reminds me a bit like that. How, yes, if you look, it was people with the height of society, the greatest culture, the most, you know, the Germans were
yes.
known for the manners and all these things. But when it came to, they can lose your humanity within a second, depending on the situation. You know, you can tell them
Yeah,
yeah,
good example how you can program a nation, or at least a big portion of a nation, or enough of that nation to create the
yeah,
most
yeah.
destructive war machine that was ever created.
But I think if you think about it now, I think
An extermination machine. It's not
yeah.
just a
But if
war machine.
sitting over here in the UK, could you could be blindsided by the fact that somebody has manners and etiquette that he's a good person. And it's not necessarily so. And I
I
think
know
that's
it.
what the story expresses. The story expresses that you know you that it's not a given. You know, the fact that somebody says good morning to you in the street every day, your neighbor, or the
Yes.
fact that you have a conversation that hello, how are you, and you can have a full conversation with somebody, and they can be very nice and very posh and very upper class, but you know you don't know what's behind that
Yeah,
screen.
especially it can be very misleading. Yeah.
Remove, put them in a survival scenario, and they'll eat you alive.
It's possible. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a lot of passive aggression here as well. So this is very this is different. We come from different culture. In our culture, it's more in your face. You know more about the person, but he actually there is hypocrisy as well, but
There is
it's different.
hypocrisy, but I'm saying we could. I think we have to take. I think the story is don't be so naive.
Hmm.
You know, don't be naive with people. The fact that they speak right, that on the out, don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah,
Do
absolutely.
you know what I mean?
I
You know,
definitely agree. Yeah.
don't judge a. You know, the fact that you're conforming to what society says and you seem all nice, hello, how are you? But
You
you
are
know,
progressive
yes,
and liberal and everything, and you just want
you
a peaceful
you're
existence.
exactly the same animal as that's what you. It's the same
Probably
animal exactly as me. Two
exactly,
things differently.
and
We're
probably
both challenging to try and reduce our animal. And you know what? Just another thought that if you don't realize you have that animal, If you forget about that animal, then you don't have to work on that animal. So
Right, yeah,
therefore, when you're in a
that's super.
situation, if at least you realize you got an animal, you got to work on it. So when you're in a situation, you realize what is communicating with you. It's coming from your animal. It's not coming from. Understand? Somebody who thinks, listen, we're progressive. I don't have an. I'm enlightened.
Yeah,
And they don't realize they have to fight with the animal soul or the animal instincts to become a real, like use the animal instincts to,
and good possibility that they belong to the most ignorant. By the way, it's from my personal experience,
Yeah, I
and
don't know
just
about ignorant, but I think they just
ignorant, they indoctrinated, programmed. A lot of times, it's just speaking certain tone that doesn't
they're
even
the
belong
first. Yeah.
with no critical thinking whatsoever.
No,
It's
so
just
usually you find that they say that Torah and mitzvahs and everything has to progress, with society, but they don't realize that actually the Torah mitzvahs and all these things are talking to your animal soul. Such a this is the best story, by the way, I've ever thought.
you like what shelter. I need to watch it again. Yes,
it's probably
to
the
remember
best
the subtleties, but it was good.
because you can be as progressive, but at the end of the day, in our core essence is not our core essence. One of our essential parts of us is our animal instincts, is our animal soul. And if you're not working on the animal soul, then and you're rather just saying, you're rather focusing on other areas, but not tackling your animal soul. That when you're in a situation where your animal soul is like in the forefront and you don't know how to control it,
I think
can
that,
cause absolute destruction.
and if anything, I think that type of attitude, lifestyle, ideology, whatever you want to call it, approach to life, brings you closer to the animal soul than anything else. I think that they actually, again, that type of some things I've heard in my life, and I'm just following. I don't have too much patience for that at this stage, but it sounds to me more animalistic than anything else.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So that was very good. I'm very happy that we spoke about the
Yeah, we
Twilight
should do
Zone.
more reviews on these things.
Please,
I can,
of course,
yeah.
anytime. There are other great
I think we
things
should look at it. I think we should look at
you want to
it
watch.
could be Twilight Zone, it could be anything that have any moral debate. I think it's a good idea.
It's yeah, I got a lot of that. Okay,
Okay,
so until the next
till the next
podcast.
time.